Hey, everybody, what's going on? I'm Aslan Hajavandi, joined by founder and administrator of Warchant.com, Gene Williams, and Corey Clark, senior lead writer for Warchant.com, the ultimate Seminoles sports source. Use a promo code Warchant30 for 30 free days of access to the ultimate Seminoles sports source. Also, hit that thumbs up if you're watching us on YouTube. That's super cool. It promotes everything. So, gentlemen, we are approaching spring football. It starts Tuesday, March 9th. Corey Clark's got a great article, story, column up on the website about the 5 things to watch for. So let me start with you, Corey. First off, I don't want you to go through all of it, but is offensive line one of the things to watch for Florida State going into a spring football season?
No, weirdly, right? I feel sort of confident that they're going to be okay. I think we saw enough from this group last year to know that, and they have most coming back from a group that was, dare I say, Gene, pretty average, pretty decent, especially relative to expectations. So, no, I think weirdly for the first time in years, to me anyway, going into a spring, going into a season, there are bigger question marks on the Florida State football team than the offensive line. So that's a baby step. There's a lot of question marks, and the offensive line is not. It ain't the Alabama. It's not the Dallas Cowboys. But I do think there are bigger question marks, bigger things to watch for in the spring.
Never thought we'd hear that day would come, but it has come. It's hard to believe. Yeah, I wrote about it, essentially right. Especially in run blocking, Corey, they made pretty significant strides. Pass blocking just slight, so there's definitely some improvements still to go there. One thing we don't know is who's that other tackle going to be. He may not be on campus right now. He could be over in, who knows, Missouri or Alaska for all we know, and could be here in a few months. So we don't know that. I'm really more intrigued. These second-year guys that look, the Schraders, who are the other, Maurice Smith, Robert Scott, some of these guys that got a lot of playing time last year that look pretty good. Now they've had that weight room. They had a year in the system. I'm kind of curious to see how much they progressed, given that they're going to have a more normalcy and a second year in the system.
Defense, I imagine, is somewhere in that top 5 of yours, Corey, the things that we need to watch for and look for when it comes to spring football. Is there a position group? Is there something that you can see? Obviously, what things do you want to see, I guess, from the defense, Corey, for spring football? What should fans expect and hope to see?
Well, I don't know what they should expect, but probably not a great deal if we're judging from what we saw last year. But I do think I want to see the infusion of the transfers, what that looks like. More than anything, though, man, you can't have a good defense. It's almost impossible to have a good defense without a pass rush. Just can't do it. Not in 2021. Everybody throws it 40 times. Everybody's spread out in the shotgun. If you can't affect the quarterback, you've got no chance to have a good defense, and it's certainly not a consistently good defense. And Florida State has not had a pass rush here in a while. Certainly was terrible last year in that department. So that's something you want to see. The defensive ends that are returning, not many have accomplished much of anything. And then also, I know Keir Thomas will probably play mostly inside, but I think he's a pass rushing guy too on third downs and the inside and the interior. So you have him and you have Jermaine Johnson from Georgia. I just want to see what that looks like. I want to see what kind of burst they have. And I want to see, I don't know if you'll be able to see in the course of a month, but how much better the guys that were here before, Briggs, McClendon, Griffiths, what they look like with some of an offseason already under their belt.
And, Corey, you ran the stat. If you haven't read it already, now you did a preview on the defensive line. It was interesting to me, and I knew the numbers were bad. That you said the combination of what Wilson, Durden, and Kendo combined for 5.5 tackles for loss and 1.5 sacks. 3 guys that were part of a group that one publication had as the number 1 defensive line in the country going into it. And it's amazing when you read your story, you lose your entire starting 4, but you actually feel better about it going into this year because, like you said, those transfers, the Keir Thomases and the Johnsons and those guys. To me, when I look at this position going just for the spring, it's really that other defensive end spot. I mean, you're right. We know Johnson's going to be one of it. It's really who's going to be that other end. And you mentioned some of those young guys. I'm kind of curious if you or Aslan think there's any 1 or 2 guys that you think might jump out and take that job.
I don't know off the top of my head. Aslan, do you have an idea who you think might?
I don't. I'm very hesitant. I'm very skittish on the defensive line.
I think Briggs showed some things. I don't know if he'll be playing behind Johnson or if they'll move him to the other side. I think he had a few flashes, but look, man, he had 6 tackles. I know he only played half the season, but he wasn't popping off the stats page. Griffiths, I think the fact that he started immediately, played a lot immediately, portends to them believing in him and seeing something in him that might be projectable towards this year or the year after, when he's a redshirt sophomore, I guess, in 2022. But so will he take a step? I just think the fact that he got on the field so early, I know they had injuries, but he got on the field so early as a true freshman, they have to think there's something there. So I guess maybe those are my two guys that I would foresee maybe having a run at the other side. Or one of the new guys.
And it might be by committee thing, right? I mean, you might see a lot of guys worked in there in the spring. They might go into the fall. They might have a different guy starting out there each week, whoever's hot or whoever's progressing. So to me, that's just one of the – if you're looking at a handful of positions, that's one to me is just totally up in the air. We have no idea.
And isn't Peter Boulware still in town?
Yeah.
I mean, you could put a number on him. They're not going to – as long as he doesn't take his helmet off. Come on.
All right, well, we can't talk about spring football without talking about quarterback, probably the number one splash transfer in the 2020-2021 cycle. Mackenzie Milton from UCF coming to Florida State, going to compete for the starting quarterback job with Jordan Travis, Chubba Purdy, and Tate Rodemaker. For you, Gene, what are you hoping to see, I guess, from Milton? Is it more the way he handles himself physically coming off that injury, or are you looking straight ahead blinders and focusing merely on how he throws the ball and how he's reading and reacting?
Well, we know how he can throw the ball. We know he can read defenses. We know he's accurate. We've seen it a lot, and he's done it at a very high level in college. So to me, that's not it. It's all about the injury thing. And I don't even know in the spring because there's no threat of being hit. It's a thing. We saw it a few years ago when DeAndre Francois came back. You remember that, Corey? He refused to run when he came back, and I think it was in his head. He was cleared medically. He was good to go, but he just did not want to run the football. It's one of those things you don't know till you get there in live action, and guys are, 230-pound linebackers are flying in your face, ends are barreling down on you from your blind side. How will you react in those situations? Will you take off and run? Because that's a big part of his game. He can take off and run. He's not Jordan Travis, but he's a guy who can get out there and make things happen with his feet and buy extra time to get passes off. So to me, that's it. Now, he will get some pressure, so I'm curious to see how he moves around, if he looks confident in what he's doing. From that perspective, because if he's good to go in that department, to me, there's no question he's the starter. I know they say it's open. I'm sure it won't be announced till a week or two before the first game, but to me, it's his job unless somehow mentally he's just not ready to go.
And I think that there's something like we know we can throw the football. Obviously, like you said, Gene, we've seen that. But where's the timing? And it's not just the timing with the receivers. It's the timing of playing quarterback. You have to process so much so quickly. And he was obviously very good at that at his former school. But is that something that's like riding a bike where you just always have it? Like, could Dan Marino go run a scout team and run a practice right now or a Florida State practice at 57 years old or whatever he is and still have that? Or is that something that you can lose over a couple of years? Is that something that becomes rusty? Because that's what I want to see. It's not just the arm talent. It's him being able to recognize something quickly and get the ball out of his hands quickly. The accuracy, the arm strength, all that stuff I think we know, but is he going to read it quickly? And is that something that takes time to develop, or is it always just there? Is it back in an instant? Because he hasn't faced, not that Florida State is great shakes defensively, but he hasn't really been in this situation that he's going to be in these spring, these good on goods in almost 2.5 years. So did you just pick up right where you left off, or is there going to be some rust that needs to shake off?
Corey, isn't that ability, though, something that some people have and just don't? I mean, that ability to process multiple things coming at you at the same time. I mean, it's the same thing. If you do something, I'm not equating it to this, it's a little different, but you play a video game that maybe you're good at, you put it away. And I bring out the old Nintendo 64, from way back when, and I'll play a game. And the first couple times, but then, after playing it 4 or 5 times, I'm pretty much back up to where I was back in my youth, to me. So I think, honestly, I think it's one of those things you either have that or you don't. You got that ability to see all these things happening simultaneously and make the right decision quickly. Sure, it may take time for him to get that and work it, and that's where this spring, I think the offseason, we've already heard that he's been out there working with the receivers. So I think he's going to be there. To me, it's more of a question of physically and mentally, is he going to be there?
And on that same point, Gene, I played Mike Tyson Punch-Out about 3 years ago, and I hadn't played it since I was 12. I knocked Tyson out.
There you go.
That bull charge. Sorry, man, I hit you in the stomach. You're going to fall backwards. And then Tyson, when he blinks, I know those 3 uppercuts are coming, and I recalled it right away and just dodged and then knocked him out. I do think that it's there. I do think you can say that. Much can be said for either you have it or you don't. We've seen plenty of talented quarterbacks physically that just don't process it quickly enough to be great. I just wonder if it can dull, if that sense of the great quarterbacks and the pocket presence in the sense and the timing, if that dulls without using it. Is it something that, like, if you don't do math for a couple of years, can it come right back? Or do you have to sharpen your mind? I think we'll know by the spring game, though, right? Like, I would expect him to be lights out the first week of facing in a real quarterback competition for the first time in who knows how long. But I would think by the spring game, after rep after rep after rep for 15 or 14 practices, it should start coming back to him, and that's when he could showcase how he's performing in that regard. Because again, like we said, I think we don't worry about the arm strength and the arm talent. It's the ability to process it really quickly.
We will find out soon enough. To Corey and Gene's point, spring football starts Tuesday, March 9th. We will get Mike Norvell and selected players afterwards in the evening. So do stay connected to Warchant.com, the ultimate Seminoles sports source. Maybe hit the thumbs up on your way out if you were waiting to see whether or not you like this video. I think Gene and Corey gave you a lot of good information that you should enjoy. Gentlemen, let's do this again sometime soon.
I can't wait, Aslan.
Do it.